In this presentation, I'm going to be looking at clauses. Clauses are simply sentence fragments, and we're going to be taking a look at the following. First of all, the use of relative pronouns in relative clauses, before we even get to relative clauses. And then the two types, defining and non-defining relative clauses. We'll have a look at participle clauses, a short look at infinitive clauses, and finally concessionary clauses. These are the relative pronouns we will see in relative clauses. Who, which refers to the subject and only refers to the subject. Despite the confusion on the other side of the Atlantic, who refers to subject only. It refers to people, and if you believe they have personalities, to animals as well. Which refers to things and concepts, and animals if you don't believe they have personalities. Whom is the object pronoun used after a preposition and in no other way. That is a less formal form of who or which or when or where or why, but only used in defining relative clauses, which we'll be looking at soon. When refers to time. Why, to say the reason for which. Whose is the possessive of both who and which. No distinction, strangely enough. So we can say the man whose hat was lost and the company whose logo is blue. No distinction. What means the thing that, or the things that, or the thing which, or the things which. Defining relative clauses, which is a really fancy title, but actually does exactly what it says. First of all, it's a clause, so it's a sentence fragment. It's relative because it contains a relative pronoun, and it's defining because it tells us who the subject is, who or what we're talking about, or which one of a group of things we're talking about. Defining relative clauses define the subject. We can use who, which, or any of the rest of them, and less formally we can also use that. We do not use commas to separate the clause from the rest of the sentence, because it's essential in the understanding of the subject. We can omit the relative pronoun if it's the object of the verb in the clause. That's the doctor who, or that she saw, can become that's the doctor she saw. Defining relative clauses. As opposed to non-defining relative clauses, which are also sentence fragments, which also contain a relative pronoun, but this time they do not define the subject. That's already done elsewhere in the sentence. Non-defining relative clauses simply give us more information about the subject. The subject is in the sentence already, and the sentence makes perfect sense without the non-defining relative clause. We need to use commas to separate this clause from the rest of the sentence. It is, after all, just additional information. We cannot omit the relative pronoun, and that can't be used to replace the relative pronoun, who, which, whatever, not even informally, not in non-defining relative clauses. Participle clauses create a new dynamic in a sentence. They make cause and effect seem closer. They close down the time between different events. Very exciting, very dynamic, very easy to use wrongly. But here's an easy way to create one. I can replace relative clauses, in which case they're called reduced relative clauses, because you're taking out the relative pronoun and the verb to be. The boy who was taken ill becomes the boy taken ill. That's an easy, safe way to create a participle clause. They're used with prepositions and conjunctions. After waving goodbye, we took a taxi. Nice and easy. After waving goodbye. They can be used to talk of events happening at the same time. Waiting for a bus, I saw Elena. They can be used to talk of sequential events. Having finished dessert, we ordered coffee. Even as an alternative to a passive. Offered a seat, I felt very comfortable. And even as an alternative to a second conditional. If I were given the chance, I would. Becomes given the chance, I would. Please be careful with participle clauses, though. They have no subject. They will pick up the first subject in the next clause, and as a result of that, can be used very, very poorly. For example, covered in mayonnaise, Dolores loves salad. Believe me, that sentence makes it sound as if it is Dolores who is covered in mayonnaise. You need to find another way of expressing this, unless you want to cover Dolores in mayonnaise. Also, please avoid using being as the opening of a participle clause. There are correct ways to do it, but I guarantee, because of your 30 years of grammar in your own language, 9 times out of 10, you'll use it incorrectly. For instance, being she clever. This isn't just poor English. This isn't even Spanglish. This is English for the insane. You're using participle clauses to impress the reader, not to frighten them. Infinitive clauses. To begin a sentence. To be a great singer is the dream of many youngsters. Or even better than that, to be or not to be. You can use them mid-sentence. It's the dream of many youngsters to be a great singer. And informal sentences after the verb to be. My job was to photocopy contracts. Concessionary clauses. This expresses an idea which is the opposite of the idea in the main part of the clause or sentence. Very, very nice. Very good use in indirect language. You know, you are conceding something because you're next going to criticize. Introduced with words like these: although, though, even though. Although he looks good, he can't sing at all. The concession is he looks good. The criticism is he can't sing at all. You can use in spite of or despite. In spite of his charms, he won nothing. While or whereas. While listening to radio is good, reading is better. And however. Penicillin is useful, however, some are allergic. Clauses of concession. Very, very useful in spoken English, in debate. Clauses are all over the English language. Some of them are easier to use than others. You need to practice them because they are particularly useful in debate or discussion. Practice, practice, practice as ever.